in time.
Yeah.
3 minutes. I have put this coin.
Yeah, good.
So, good
You put it.
evening, one and all.
No,
Today, on the
you use it.
occasion of
Sit comfortably on this chair.
centennial celebrations of Hera's Institute, we have organized Hera's Memorial Lectures by eminent Padma Shri awardee Professor K. Paddaya. Thank you, sir, for
Thank
accepting
you.
our invitation and graciously occasioning. We are really grateful to Professor Ganachari, who was constantly in dialogue with Dr. Paddaya and helped us in organizing this particular talk. Today, he will be chairing the session. Since it is the centennial celebrations, we thought that it will be really sensible to call Dr. Paddaya, who belongs to the lineage of Father Henry Heras. He is the ardent student of Professor Sankalia, and Professor Sankalia was a great student of
Father
Father
Heras.
Henry Heras. So we are really fortunate to have you, sir. And your legacy, you have also complementing the legacy of Hera's Institute. In short, I'll introduce Professor Ganachari, though he's a very well-known figure and does not require any introduction. But on behalf of the management of Hera's Institute and the advisory board of the institute, I like to give a brief introduction. So, Professor Ganachari was a student of Bombay University. He did his post-graduation and PhD under well-known Professor Naik. He served university and college and university for 42 years, where he retired as head and professor of history in University of Mumbai. He has published very beautiful books on which really has helped many history and philosophy students to look into the lives of Gopal Ganesh Agarkar, a secular rationalist reformer, nationalism and social reform in colonial situation, and Gopal Ganesh Agarkar in Marathi he has published Buddhi Pramanyavadi Vicharvant आणि थोर समाज सुधारक. He has also helped Professor Arun Tikekar in writing the history of Mumbai University on the occasion of sesquicentennial celebrations. He has worked on Marathi theatre and published the work on that. He has been eminently editing many works. He has been going and participating in many international conferences, to name a few: University of Georgia, University of Leicestershire in UK, Simon Fraser University. He has been on advisory boards of Government of Maharashtra and many bodies of Human Resource Development Ministry. He has been working extensively on areas of intellectual history, social history, Gandhian philosophy, and cultural history. His book, Indians in the First World War, The Missing Links, has been really appreciated a lot, and his publication is out of stock. So that is really wonderful achievement. And thank you, sir, for gracing this occasion and helping us in organizing this talk. Thank you. I request Professor Ganachari to introduce Dr. Paddaya.
Thank you, Shilpa. It's I feel really honored to be chairing this session. And at the outset, I first thank Professor Paddaya to have accepted our invitation. And I find myself in the chair as by default. though I belong to a different branch of history. Uh, but I really thank him for who could have been better person to talk on Father Heras on the occasion of the not only the 60-second series of Father Heras lectures, but on the occasion of the centenary. Father Heras came to India in 1922 after all the German and Austrian Jesuits who were imprisoned in Ahmednagar fort for 6 years. They went back, and then came the Spanish and the Portuguese Jesuits. It was Eric Heras de Sicars who named himself an anglicized name with Father Henry Heras, came in 1922. His interest in history, and he founded the Society of Bombay uh, Historical Society, which in 1955 all his students together named it as Heras Institute after his death in 1955. It has been a centenary year, and on this occasion, he is who Father Harris's student H.D. Sankhalia and his student Professor Paddaya, who could I have better qualification to speak on this occasion? Thank you, sir. Thank you first
Thank you. Thank you.
for accepting our invitation. Now, to talk about, it's indeed I feel privileged to talk on Professor Paddaya. Professor Paddaya, who is quite senior in almost all respect to me in matters of age, in matters of honor, in matters of intellectual achievements, is far more, and that's why I said I'm here in the chair by default. Sir, you have done massive work on. First, you began with your extensive work on the Paleolithic and Neolithic cultures of Surapur Doab in the Deccan, and you have worked. You say you had two. You say theoretical and methodological perspectives in archaeological studies, which many have considered as major innovations in archaeological field. You have had two Fulbright fellowships, one of University of California and the University of New Mexico. You were also the recipient of senior lecturer
Coil is there?
grant
Yeah, regarding the
and of University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, and Smith. You have published so many works, and only to say a few was recent studies in Indian archaeology, investigations into Neolithic and the culture of Surapur, Doab, South India, new archaeological aftermath, a view from outside the Anglo-American world, multiple approaches to the study of early past. You have scripted many other works. You have been more prolific after retirement. Having published Revitalizing Indian Archaeology, multiple approaches to the study of archaeology, methodological issues in Indian archaeology. Your editing of volume on R.G. Bhandarkar recently has been a great contribution, and I enjoyed reading your article on one of my seniors, M.K. Dhaulikar. Sir, indeed, we are very thankful to you for having accepted our invitation. And I now request you to give your oration and on this occasion of centenary of Father Heras Institute. In fact, the government in his honor brought out a stamp in 1981 with his picture
Comment.
as well as Mohenjo-daro
It's not there,
tablet, it is indeed a fitting honor for us to have
Yeah,
you, sir,
something.
on this occasion.
Oh,
May I now request you? I don't want to hold so much time between the audience and you, sir. Please.
very many thanks, Professor Ganachari, for your kind words about me. And good evening to all of you. And first of all, I must thank the director of Father Hera's Institute for Indian History and Culture, uh, Dr. Father Keith D'Souza, for inviting me to deliver this special lecture in memory of Father Heras. And of course, I must also say thank you to Shilpaji for making all the arrangements for materializing this lecture. And surely I am grateful to Professor Ganachari himself, for suggesting my name to deliver the 62nd memorial lecture for Father Heras. And it's indeed a pleasure to be called that I am a part of the lineage of St. Xavier's College and Father Heras. I think it is very true. Professor Sankalya was my guru, and whose guru was Father Heras. And in a way, today we are paying homage to both of them, first as Guru, Professor Sankalya, and Father Heras as Guru Pitamaha. And I must also share this good news. Today is the 117th birthday of my Guru, Professor Sankalya. And I think we are only 4 days away from the 70th death anniversary of Father Heras himself. And I feel it is a great honor to pay homage to the memory of both these great personalities on this occasion. And Professor Father Heras and my Guru, Professor Sankalya, they were an adorable and unique Guru Shishya combination. And both of them, this cannot be said in a number of cases in modern times. Both of them were persons with depth of scholarship, but also their character was spotless. This combination of scholarship and character is something very, very rare, and I think it is something which we need to invoke in the modern higher education system in India. I will not go into details about our modern education system, but I must first of all recall that as a student of Professor Sankalya, later on as one of his younger colleagues, we used to hear very often, Professor Sankalya referring to his guru, Father Heras, in reverential words. Oh, you see, I mean, he used to tell us, do this way, don't do this way, and this is the right approach. That is not the right approach, etc., etc. And in fact, Professor Sankalya, in his writings, said in so many words that his career was molded by his guru, Father Heras. And he also wrote that not a day would pass without remembering Father Heras, and that he guided him both as a student and as a teacher at every step. And in fact, it was Father Heras who told Professor Sankalia, who just graduated, obtained his BA degree, that you shift from Sanskrit, come to history, and do your MA thesis on the University of Nalanda. Now, that is a classic publication, and it is reprinted, you see. And then that was in 1932. And it was again Father Heras who told Dr. Sankalia and his parents that he must pursue higher studies. He must go in for research, and that is how Dr. Sankalia went to London University, got his doctorate degree from London University in 1937. And then Dr. Sankalia came here. Jobs were very few in number, but as Providence would have it, he was selected as the curator of Prince of Wales Museum. Now it is Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Museum, and also as professor of Proto and Ancient Indian History at the Deccan College. So the choice was between these two posts, and again it was Father Heras. Don't go in for this post of curator, that is a museum post, and if you remain there for a long time, you will get fossilized. Better go to Deccan College and be a teacher, and you will shine and you will thrive. And Dr. Sankalia accepted the advice of Father Heras, and he came to Deccan College in 39, and he retired in 1972. And of course, he continued to stay on the campus till his demise on 28th January 1989. And I think it will require several lectures to speak about the contributions of Professor Sankalia to the betterment of Indian archaeological and, in a general way, Indological studies. And without any parallel, without any equal, Professor Sankalia, even till today, I think he is the greatest archaeologist of modern India. And I hope, there will be some rival in the decades to come. Let us hope, But as the situation stands, I think he is unequaled. And I think much of the credit goes to his guru, Father Heras. And I'm sure Professor Sankalia would not really, correct my statement. Now, I think this is what, this how, we start by paying homage to the memory of these two great personalities. And coming to Father Heras himself, I think already Shilpaji and Professor Ganachari mentioned about how he came to India in 1922. But what is important is, I cannot claim that I have read everything written and said by Father Heras. But from whatever I have read, it is very clear that Father Heras was a self-made teacher of history and self-made researcher in Indological studies. And in both these realms, he really excelled and he obtained excellence. And I think this is something very, very remarkable. When he came to Mumbai in 1922, he had no idea of India, nor of history, nor of its culture. But he wanted to. Probably he was guided by the ideals of the age of enlightenment. That is, one of trying to understand and appreciate other people's, other cultures, and other histories of other people. And probably, it was this notion which made him take up the position of teacher in Indian history. And although there were some doubts, but he said he will study Indian history and culture, and he will teach simultaneously. I think I mean, he did full 100% justice to both these things. He studied and also he taught and he researched Indian history of all periods. I think this is really remarkable, and of course you can imagine that very soon he started taking interest in taking students and his colleagues to historical places in Maharashtra, probably even outside Maharashtra, and he realized Indian history is not merely for teaching, but and he was interested in starting research activity to that is how in a matter of 4 years he founded Indian Historical Research Institute, later on named after him. Father Heras Institute of Indian History and Culture. You see, but this is something, and we are so happy that this institute is still doing fantastic work. Their own periodical, various publications. They have a museum section, and I had the honor of visiting this institute in 2006. And I know, you see, how wonderful this setup is established by Padre Heras. And and then of course, a lot of teaching, encouraging students. Dr. Sankale himself, Salvatore, and George Moraes, and so many others. And wonderful research activity, not merely teaching and encouraging students, but wonderful research activity. So much so that the record shows that he has to his credit 17 or 18 books or pamphlets and about 270 articles in English, in Spanish, and French published in India and in Spain, probably in France. And this is something very, very remarkable for a person who was not, initiated in the Indian historical studies. And not merely that, uh, not merely that, he was well versed and he wrote about various, phases of India. See, ancient Indian history and medieval history and even modern history. And I came across a reference that he edited some of the correspondence between Fort William in Kolkata and the India House in London. And no, this is colonial history. And what is as an archaeologist, I am really fascinated that in his historical, in his teaching of history and historical research, Father Heras gave equal importance to archaeology. And several writings in archaeology and ancient Indian culture, even we see iconography and epigraphy, and he wrote a 50-page article on Ganapati, deity, and like this. We'll not go into details. But what I am really fascinated is, and I think this is something which we should really pursue. And when he started this research institute in 1926, alongside he published a book on methodology, writing history notes on historical methodology for students. No, actually, for a long time, Technical College Library, till recently, did not have a copy. Even till today, it doesn't have it doesn't have a copy. But I was very keen on seeing this, and I requested my younger colleague Srikant Zadav, and he borrowed it from Heras Institute library, and he got me a Xerox copy. When I started reading it, I just felt, something very unbelievable. And in 1926, someone who came from outside without any formal qualifications in Indian historical scholarship, writing a book on the methodology of doing Indian history, studying Indian history, and wonderful publication, 130 pages, where he talks about see what is history. And history is not an imaginary story, but it is the narrative of facts and facts tied together and connected together and telling us something about ancient times, not merely about wars and revolutions and great events, but about social institutions, intellectual accomplishments, about literary accomplishments, about art and architectural developments, and this is something. See, later on, as some of you would know, there came in 1930s in France what is called Annales School of History, advocating that we must now give more importance not to political history but socio-economic fact. But Father Harras was already saying this in India in 1926. And later on, Annales School, paradigm was borrowed by Jainiya school. But what is important in Western India, already in 1926, Father Harras was advocating this. Probably he implemented this ideal in some of his writings. I think this is something very remarkable. This 130-page document is really remarkable, and I do not know. How many people who do Indian history, whether of ancient period, whether of medieval period or colonial period, are aware of this. As far as I know, of that period, I don't think any Indian historian wrote anything about
अभी आया
historical.
आवाज.
Hello, yeah. Hello. Hello.
Sir, continue. Sir, continue.
Yeah, okay. And I know that historians like K.N. Nilakanta Shastri wrote about historical methodology, but these writings came only in 1950s, whereas the book done by, the small book done by Father Harras was published in 1926, and along with the establishment of Indian Institute for Historical Studies. I think this is something very remarkable. I would, if the Harras Institute is celebrating the centenary of the institute, but I think they should also celebrate the centenary of this wonderful publication of Father Harras. I would really, feel it will be a great thing if this book of Father Harras could be republished, and it is worth publishing. And even now, it will be extremely useful to all students and researchers of Indian history, of the ancient period, medieval period, and even the colonial period. This is my, small request to the Harras Institute. Anyway, I will now, come to my topic. My topic is about recent developments in archaeology, in archaeological theory. See, theory of archaeology. Now, I must, thank the Harras Institute to invite me for a second time. I do not know whether, any one of you would remember that I already gave, the Harras Memorial Lecture in 2006, and I was at St. Xavier's College for 2 days on 14th and 15th December 2006. I gave 2 lectures. The title of these lectures is Culturalification of Artifacts. In the first lecture, I took a review of the theoretical developments that came up in the Anglo-American world in the second half of the last century. And then in the second lecture, I was trying to tell the audience how some of us, and in fact I myself, how we were trying to implement some of these ideas in our archaeological investigations in the southern Deccan. In my case, the Shorapur Doab, as Professor Ganachari has already mentioned. And both these lectures were published in the next year in Indica. See, 2000. If you see the volume of Indica for 2007, you will find this 30-page article about the 2 lectures, and that's one thing. But my interaction with the Harras Institute, so far as theory is concerned, is even earlier. It so happened that Professor Sankalia wrote the first book about archaeological theory. It's called New Archaeology, its scope and application to India in 1977, a few years after, 5 years after he retired. And then he came to the department, one day, and very coolly entered my room. He placed a copy of that book on my table. He said, I should review it. And I was really flabbergasted because, theory was something not very, very common those days. But still, I accepted. I spent some 6 months. I read that book and also other books. I prepared a 4-page review. I gave it to Professor Sakalia, and he sent it to Indica. And this review was published in Indica, I think, volume probably 15 for the year 1978. So what I want to say that Heras Institute, in a way, and till since then, I have kept up my interest in, apart from other things in archaeology, interest in archaeological theory. That is how today's lecture has come up. And what I want to say, Heras Institute has served as the springboard for my interest for pursuing my interest in archaeological theory. Credit, of course, goes to my guru for initiating me into this field. My writings about archaeological theory commenced thanks to the, thanks to the support help given by the Heras Institute. I'm truly grateful to the Heras Institute for this particular gift given to me. Now I will come to this topic. My recent developments in archaeological theory. Now, I think even now most of the people in the country, including historians and some of the archaeologists too, believe that archaeology is just a study of ancient things, and and they collect things, and sometimes I have come across people very jovially calling archaeology. It is stonology. Somebody would say, oh, it is study of ancient potsherds, and somebody would say study of ancient bricks. But you see, ultimately archaeology has evolved as a regular scientific discipline, and there is knowledge acquiring component in it. In fact, this term itself, archaeology, archeo, ancient, logos, see, that is knowledge. And now, see, we know that for about 3 or 4 centuries, starting from 16th, 17th, for 3 or 4 centuries, there was only antiquarianism in Western Europe. And of course, in India, there was hardly any activity. On the other hand, ancient sites were being, quarried for bricks and, stone slabs and, etc. And of course, treasure hunting. But in Western Europe, at least, there were some artists, there were some writers, there were, other persons who were going to ancient sites and, making some sketches, making some notes, and this is called antiquarianism. But then the aspect of acquiring knowledge about the past from the ancient remains was not really there. And this knowledge component came only in the first half of the 19th century, thanks to one museum curator of Copenhagen Museum, one C.J. Thompson. And there were some 500 or so objects in the accumulated in the Copenhagen Museum. And then he organized them into 3 groups. Stone tools and iron tools and artifacts of bronze and other metals. So he called the first group storage. Probably in the distant past, man was able to make only stone tools. Later on came, bronze tools. Much later came the iron, artifacts. So 3 ages system came, and Thompson, actually, even in archaeology, it's not frequently Thompson's name is brought up, and it's really remarkable. He said, that study of these unwritten materials, he called them indirect sources, gives us information about ancient religion, ancient cultures, and about natural history and ancient migrations, movements of the people. This is something very remarkable. What I want to say that with this 3A system of C.J. Thompson of Copenhagen Museum in 1836, the true meaning of archaeology. See, that is, archaeology deals with acquisition of knowledge about the ancient past through archaeological remains came. Before that, it was all antiquarianism, and then this race system was elaborated. You see, I mean, see, in a very big way. By the end of the 19th century, and archaeology was introduced into the universities, but still, theoretical aspects were not introduced in a formal way. And then when we come to the first half of the 20th century, already some, writings begin to come up both in North America and in Western Europe, and saying, that, what kind of knowledge? See, that probably, see, we can acquire information about, the various functional aspects of these antiquarian remains. We can acquire some information about the social aspects. We can acquire information even about ancient technology. We can acquire information about, ancient, farming practices, ancient hunting practices, etc. See, now this knowledge component begins to acquire newer dimensions. And we have a number of writers spread over North America and France and England particularly, like Graham Clark, and there were even Flinders Petrie, who excavated Egyptian pyramids, and in fact he wrote the first textbook like account of archaeology, aims and methods in archaeology, in 1904. See, where he says that archaeology can study human communities as they were adapting themselves to various environmental conditions. And he said archaeology is one discipline which promotes the spirit of toleration. See, he even thought it as an important, instrument of liberal education. And then, like this, some Professor, Graham Clark, who was knighted by the British government, and wanted to tell you from America, and there are so many others. But then it was left to Gordon Child, a great name in the history of archaeology, Australian-born British archaeologist who was there in Edinburgh University, later on in the Institute of Archaeology in London. See, who actually in the 1950s formulated all these theoretical stipulations, and sort of regular theory begins to emerge. So much so that many of us in archaeology would like to call Gordon Child the father of archaeological theory. He did not excavate any sites. He did not, coin new cultural designations. But in fact, he said, my most useful and lasting contributions are in terms of interpretative methods and systems of explanation. I think that is so. This is, in fact, it was he who said that all these artifacts, these are extracorporeal limbs, and they allow the humans to adapt themselves to different, environmental settings. And he defined what is culture and various, concepts which we use in archaeology: type, assemblage, site, and etc. etc. See, it was not only he said. Not only he said this, but he also pointed out that archaeological remains can also allow us to infer the kind of knowledge, repertoire which the ancient communities had. You see, the ways things were made, and he even said, that some of these, artifactual materials made by ancient communities, they have symbolic value too. And that he said, study of archaeology allows us to think more clearly and act more humanly. In fact, that you see, what is the relevance of archaeology? In fact, Father Harras himself, said in that book on methodology that, the study of history gives us, great gifts to human mind and human heart. See, I think these are so these are people who not only did wonderful work, but who also realized the study of the past has relevance to the present to society. See, this is what Gordon said. So, in already by the by the middle of the last century, particularly 1950s, Gordon Chay's writings, I'm sure many of you are aware of his great writings like Man Makes Himself, What Happened in History, and he was the one who saw the prehistory of various countries in Europe as a unified theme. And then he saw that the European prehistory has the basis, has Western Asia has its basis, and see that was But so these general synthesis apart, Gordon Child initiated, sort of, he made the real beginnings of theory in archaeology. So we call him the father of theoretical archaeology. Now, and then picking up some of these clues given by Gordon Child and others, two great movements came up in the second half of the last century. And in 1960s, what we call new archaeology, and Professor Sankalia's book of 1977 is about this theme, new archaeology. And persons like Lewis Binford from North America, from USA, and David Clark from Cambridge University. These were the people who sort of took the lead, and they said archaeology should lose its innocence, and it should now develop its own theoretical and methodological frameworks. And archaeology can in fact do wonderful systemic studies, and we will be able to reconstruct the functioning of ancient societies and their relationships with their environmental settings and cultural contacts. And this is what is called the study of the ancient societies in processual terms. So new archaeology is also called processual archaeology, and ultimately we should be able to arrive at some sort of middle range generalizations. And I think this is the great contribution made by new archaeology or processual archaeology. And then in 1980s came up a kind of reactionary movement, what is called interpretative archaeology. This was spearheaded by Professor Ian Hodder, who is still with us. He retired from Stanford University later on. First, he was in Cambridge University. He said, yes, okay, we can always use the archaeological record to study, how the ancient, societies were functioning, which artifacts were used for which purpose, ancient behavior. But then we must understand ancient human societies also had minds. They also had feelings, and archaeological remains need to be seen as a text, and we should be able to read in these texts the feelings, sentiments, and motivations of the ancient community. So came what is called interpretive archaeology, and different aspects of interpretive archaeology, symbolic archaeology, semiotic archaeology, etc., etc. So this another movement came. These were the two movements. Now, these are of course very much alive there, and then what has happened during the last 25, 30 years, beginning of this century, also heralded the beginnings of yet another theoretical move, and this is what is called the post-human turn in archaeology. And actually, what is this post-human turn? I will just tell you in one sentence. Here, the argument is till now. We are there as archaeologists. We are the subject, and archaeological objects are the object, and we study them. We impose the meanings on them, and various kinds of meanings, and what is called, the various theoretical perspectives which have been there earlier. culture history, I mean, recognizing various stages in human history, human prehistory, and then reconstruction of life ways, Sumerian civilization, Egyptian civilization, and then processual, looking at the ancient communities in terms of the various cultural process, and then interpretive archaeology. Now these are all knowledge based, but we're all imposing these things on the artifacts. We are not giving much relevance whether the material remains which form part of the archaeological record have some inherent attributes, inherent energies, inherent capacities, and so this is so. I mean, a kind of reaction came up from the beginning of this century, saying that we as archaeologists, we must now sort of recede to the background and allow the archaeological materials themselves to speak and reveal their capacities, their vibrancies, and their, I mean,